Hi all, if you are a returning viewer, welcome back. If you are new, welcome. My name is Amira and today I am doing my Pat McGrath Six Pan palette ranking. I've promised this to a couple of my viewers after I did my Mothership ranking as well as my eyeshadow palette collection where I went through all of my Pat McGrath palettes. So let's get into it. All right, so just to give you sort of an overview, I have 11 six-pan palettes from Pat McGrath. I think I have all of them except for one, maybe. I'm not sure. I know I have I have the first three original six pans that she came out with, and then I have the three that she came out with that following holiday season. And then I have the two that she came out with when she did the Star Wars collab. And I have three sort of specialty ones. So I don't know if that's all of them. I'll have to check and see. But I would say I have most of them. So let's start off with number 11 in my collection. And that is the Mothership Subversive Metamorphosis palette. This bad boy here. And let me open it up so you can see her. And if you haven't seen my ranking, then you know you haven't seen these before. But if you have, then you kind of know what I've got going on here. So this is what it looks like. And the reason why this is my least favorite, it's twofold. One, it is an all metallic palette, which I know sounds weird when I talk about the fact how, when I've talked about how much I love Decadence, which is also an all metallic palette. But the difference is that this palette has a ton of repeats. So a lot of these shades are actually in Decadence or are in other palettes that Pat has in her range. And so for me, it's kind of a redundant palette. I bought this palette before I started purchasing her full-size Motherships. The first Pat McGrath palettes I ever purchased were her six-pan palettes. So after I purchased this one and then I started purchasing her full-size, this one became kind of redundant and I just don't reach for it. I don't think I'll ever get rid of it because you can't get this anymore. I kind of love having a little bit of her sort of like eyeshadow history, and I used to be a Pat McGrath completionist. I'm working my way through that. But because I used to be one, and also I just kind of have some nostalgic feelings about my Pat McGrath collection. I'll never get rid of this, but I can't even tell you the last time I reached for it. But yes, this is number 11, Metamorphosis. Number 10 is the Mothership Sublime Golden Opulence palette, and this was let me take the little thingy out. This was a limited edition palette that was for Lunar New Year, I believe, Lunar New Year 2020, I believe. So yeah, this is what it looks like. It's just, for me, this is probably one of her more underwhelming color stories. I like it more than Metamorphosis because it does have mattes in it, so I feel like it's more of a cohesive palette, but I just feel like she could have put more into it, especially when you look at the packaging. The outside packaging is stunning, and I look at this and I think, why didn't we get some really great reds and golds and like a deep rich black? Like there's so much that could have been done with this packaging. So it's just the inside of it is a bit underwhelming. The formula is fine, and I will preface that, I've said this before in other videos, I have never had an issue with any Pat McGrath palettes as far as her formula goes. So none of these palettes in this ranking are terrible formula. It's just all about color story preference as well as how often I think to reach for them and how inspiring I find them to be. So yes, this is number 10 and this is Golden Opulence. Next up is a palette that when I did my eyeshadow palette collection video, I think I forgot to include this, and I think it's because when I was taking all of my Pat McGrath palettes out of the drawer, this one kind of slid to the back and I didn't see it. But I also think it's indicative of how I feel about this palette that I completely forgot about it. And this is the Pat McGrath Bridgerton Collab 6-pan palette. I recently reviewed this on my channel and I was very sort of meh and indifferent towards it, and I still feel that way. And again, I think it is a more interesting color story than the previous two palettes, which is why it's ranking at number 9. But I still don't know if this is something that I would reach for a ton, and that's what it looks like if you haven't seen it. Yeah, I love the packaging, and I get the, you know, if you've seen Bridgerton, this is very Bridgerton-esque. But I think the color story could have been a bit more interesting, especially because she has so many pinks and rosy tones in this. And she has so many pinks and rosy tones in her, you know, collection, in her lexicon, because of all of the Divine Rose palettes and 6 pans, and you know, there's so much Divine Rose pinky stuff that I just feel like this could have been a little bit different and a little bit more inspired. So yes, this is number, let's see, that was 10. I have 11, so yeah, this is number 9. Next up, I have one of the palettes from her original 6-pan release. She came out with 3, like a trio of 6 pans, which were the first 6 pans that she ever released. And this is Mothership Subliminal Platinum Bronze. And this is one of the very first things I ever purchased from Pat McGrath as far as eyeshadows go. And this is what it looks like. I actually think this is a really pretty palette. I just think that I don't reach for it as much, and it only has one matte in it. I think the metallics in this are really pretty. I just wish there was another matte besides this deep velvet shade that's like, Pat is known for all of her mattes in her palettes tend to be like that rich, either like a rich brown or a rich burgundy, you know, the deepest shade. And I just wish we had something else, another option in this palette. But I don't think there's anything wrong with the color story per se. I've used this, you know, many a time, and I think it's pretty. I just wish we had a little bit more as far as options, as far as mattes, because the only matte is the deep velvet shade, and you don't have any mid-tone mattes in this palette. So yes, so that is, let's see, number 8. Next up is number 7, which is also another one of the original trio of 6 pans that she came out with, and this is Mothership Sublime Bronze Ambition. And this is what she looks like. And this is the first one I ever purchased. I've used this one, I would say, of all 3 of the original ones, this is the one that I've used the most. It's just, it's a beautiful color story, but it's very basic. It's very warm. This kind of came out at the height of when like warm tones were, you know, the thing. And I think this is beautiful. I think it suffers from the same issue that Platinum Bronze had, is that the sense that it has only one matte. The difference here is that the matte that is in here is a mid-tone matte. So you could deepen up with like the darker metallic shade, which I will say that Pat's metallics are wonderful. And if you buff them out, you can use them sort of like satins. So they are versatile, you know, but yeah, you would only have that illicit metallic shade to deepen up your outer corner. So it's kind of like both palettes suffer from the same issue, but like opposite ends of the issue, if that makes sense. Number 6 in my ranking is the Mothership eyeshadow palette, and I think this has a name. Yes, Rose Decadence. It's not on here though, which I find interesting. This is what the outside looks like. And this is when she started changing her outside packaging for her 6 pans. This one came out, I believe, in 2020, either beginning of 2021 or end of 2020. And this is what it looks like. And again, this is kind of what I was touching on. This 6 pan came out after Divine Rose 2. And I guess it's sort of meant to be like an abbreviated version of that. I wouldn't say it's much like Divine Rose 1, which is quite cool toned, but I do feel like when I look at this that I see this as very much an abbreviated Divine Rose 2. What I do love about this palette is the fact that she does in fact have 2 mattes. She has this matte here and this matte there, and those are shades, let's see here, that is shade Peach Dusk and Hedonistic Rose. So for me, I think this is just this is actually quite a cohesive color story. And I think it's pretty. I just don't reach for it as much as some of the other 6 pans, but I don't think it's a bad palette. But yeah, this is what I mean by her having a ton of rosy tones, which is why I feel like the Bridgerton one is a bit redundant. Number 5 is the final of the original trio of 6 pans, and this is Lavion Rose. If you saw my declutter, you know I talked about how I ripped this off Hulk style, so it didn't fall apart. I literally ripped it off with my bare hands. All right, so let me show you this color story. And I think this color story is so pretty, and you do have like a dark burgundy matte, but you also have this pot pink, which is called Rose Risque, which is kind of a satin, so it has a bit of sheen to it, but it functions very much like a matte. So you do have 2 mattes in this palette to work with, essentially. And I just think the shades and the tones are really, really pretty. Pale Fire is a fave, as is Purple Rain and Euphoria. It's a really pretty palette. It's very colorful. It's not, I mean, if you're not into, of course, if you're not into like purples and pinks and stuff, you're probably, you know, this probably isn't your jam. But yeah, so this is number 5. Whoa, number 5. Next up is number 4, and this is the Galactic Gold Six Pan, and this is from the Star Wars collab that she did a couple of years ago. I think it was 2019, holiday 2019, and this is what it looks like. Let me take a little card out. Beautiful. If this looks familiar to you, as will the next palette that I'm going to bring up, if this looks familiar to you, there is a reason for that. For Pat's Holiday 2020 Mega Palette, the first one that she came out with, which was, I believe, Celestial Divinity, it was the big pink Mega Palette. On either side, the right and the left, there was a collection of shades that were actually the 2 collection of shades, 6 shades from the 2 6-pan palettes that she released with the Star Wars collection. So on one side, which I believe is the right side of the palette, is this color story. Beautiful color story. Again, it's an all metallic palette though, and the reason why I'm ranking it higher than the other ones is that I just find this color story a bit more interesting with the purples and the copper and all that good stuff. But it is an all metallic palette. And that is number 4. Nice formula. I love the color story. I don't use it as much as I would, you know, normally use Pat McGrath palettes, but just I rank this high because I do prefer the color story to some of the ones below. And then we have Dark Galaxy, which is the second 6-pan from the Star Wars collection, which is the other side of Celestial Divinity. So that looks familiar to you. There it is. I just think this is so pretty. Again, it suffers from only having one dark matte, but the other shades in here are so nice. And there are repeats. I will say this about this palette as well as the other one, that there are repeats in these palettes. Smoked Amethyst is a repeat. Let me see, and then this one, Gold Standard is a repeat, and Corruption is a repeat, and I will show you Corruption in another palette in just a moment. But there are repeats, so if you have some of her larger pan palettes, her motherships, you might have some of these shades already. I will say this, if you were interested in these, she has just restocked. I think it should still be in stock. I don't know. I know she restocked it this weekend. and I don't know if it's still in stock. If it is, I will link it down below. It will be an affiliate link, so if you use my link, I do get a small commission, but you know, just full disclosure. But yes, these are the 2 sides of that palette, and she restocked that palette along with the 2021 Mega Palette. So yeah, if you were interested in these, that is the palette to get if you want those. I personally would have bought Celestial Divinity if it didn't have those 6 shades on either side, those 12 shades on either side rather. I really love the 6 shades in the middle, and I really want her to eventually release those as a 6-pan because I will snap that up. But I just didn't, it doesn't make sense to me to repurchase, you know, 12 shades that I already own. So that's why I didn't buy that one. Number 2 in my ranking is Mothership Sublime Bronze Temptation. And I will show you what she looks like. There she is. Beautiful palette. Now, remember how I said there were some repeats? Let me see if I can open both of these up at the same time. Where did I put this at? Okay, here we go. So this is Galactic Gold. So this shade, whoop, and I just dug my hand in the shadow. We're gonna ignore that. We're gonna ignore that. But this shade here, it's called Corruption. It is the exact same shade here, also called Corruption. So I'm just saying, if you missed out on this palette, if you missed out on that palette, pick up the Mega palette if it's still in stock, if you want that shade. This shade, I love this shade. It's got this shift to it. Like where I'm looking at it now, it looks bronze. And then when I show it to you guys, it's red. And that's how it shifts on the eye. It is a stunning shade. And this is why this palette ranks number 2 for me. I love this color story. It has a green in it that's like this really beautiful, like rich green. But then it has, you know, this beautiful, the red that shifts. And I don't know if you can see the shift. I'm going to see if I can like turn my hand. Maybe you can see it there. Can you see that shift? I don't know if you can see it. Stunning. But then it also has 2 mattes. It has a deep rich matte. It has a mid-tone matte. It has these beautiful, like it has this really flaky shade that also has a bit of a shift. It kind of reminds me of a more souped up version of ColourPop's Tea Garden, which I also own. And then it has this beautiful champagne-y gold. This is a really beautiful, cohesive, you know, color story. And for that reason, it's why it's ranked so high. I get a lot of joy out of using this, and I think it's a fun color story. It is from the holiday, so it has that holiday vibes, but I feel like you can use that, you know, anytime you want. Now I need to wipe my hand. The number 1 in my 6 pans, and I will say I originally did a ranking of all my 6 pans along with all of my other. I did it all as one on my blog, and if I remember, I will leave a link to that. But my collection has changed so much from that post. It's very old and very outdated, so I don't know how relevant it actually is to this convo or my ranking of my motherships, because I didn't own very many motherships then, and now I own all of them except for one. But I will say my 6 pan, my feeling about these 6 pans have changed so much since that time. And a palette that ranked actually pretty low in that ranking is number 1 now. And that is the 6 pan palette Dark Star. And there it is. Now, I recently rediscovered this and I was like, what have I been smoking? Why haven't I been using this? It's amazing. I just find this color story so fun and so interesting. And it's got 2 golds, but it's got this really beautiful rich gray. It's got this really dimensional blue metallic that also kind of shifts a little bit purple. You've got this rich burgundy kind of blood red metallic. It's just a beautiful, beautiful palette. And I rediscovered it recently and I've been using it a ton. And honestly, when I sat down to do this ranking, and I try to do these rankings pretty quickly. I don't spend a lot of time obsessing over them, because I feel like whatever your first instinct is, like your first gut reaction, is probably the most accurate one, where it's supposed to, you know, overthinking things. So for me, when I sat down to do this, I did it in like 10 minutes, and that one was the one that I knew that I was like, that's number 1. And I'm like, this one's number 2. And everything else I kind of, you know, moved around and reshuffled a little bit, but I knew that one was going to be number 1 because it's the one that's been the most inspiring for me lately. Now, who knows, like a year from now, this ranking may change. That's the great thing about when you have a collection and you're using your makeup, is that things can sort of, you know, your feelings about them can shift and change, and, you know, according to to your usage of them. And for me right now, this is the one that I find the most inspiring. Who knows? Again, this one may overtake it. I might start using this one even more than that one and be like, oh no, this one's number 1. But as of now, and you know, beginning of February 2022, this is my number 1 6 pan, which is Dark Star. your favorite six pan? Let me know in the comments down below. Also, yes, if you are not subscribed, please be sure to subscribe and to like this video. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye now.